Hi, I'm a possum and I find garbage. Today's garbage is Swamp Ape, a movie about an average day in Florida. If you don't know what a swamp ape is, it's Florida's equivalent of Bigfoot. That's it. There's pretty much no distinction other than the swamp ape lives in swamps and reportedly smells really bad, which is why it's also called a skunk ape. If Bigfoot is Coca-Cola and the Yeti is Pepsi, then the swamp ape is Shasta. So I guess technically this isn't a Bigfoot movie, even though it totally is. Swamp Ape was made by a bodybuilder and YouTuber named Jeff Ward. It's spelled like G-Off, but I guess it's pronounced Jeff. As of the time of this review, G-Off's channel hasn't been active in years, but he used to make videos in which he would interview bikini and fitness models and just act like a creepy macho dimwit around them. He's basically a real-life Johnny Bravo. Oh yeah, he also used to do prank videos, and occasionally little comedy sketches and short films. One of those was the precursor to this movie, The Adventures of Swamp Ape, which had no plot and was just 4 minutes of a guy in a cheap Bigfoot costume going around scaring people for 4 minutes. I guess making that made J-Off decide he was qualified to make a movie, so he developed that premise and turned it into 58 minutes of boring pseudo-comedy punctuated by violent monkey shenanigans. I dropped my pennies. The movie starts with two rednecks hunting without permission on someone's private property, and their dog suddenly breaks from its leash and runs after something. The rednecks run after the dog and see it get grabbed by a guy in a gorilla costume in the water, which they proceed to shoot at while the digitally over-sharpened iPhone footage takes on a red tint.
Whatever it was, we killed him.
After the title, we cut to some filthy degenerates playing volleyball on a beach.
Damn, that was a nice fight. I think you're ready for this weekend.
The only thing more fake than your dubbed voice is your false air of macho confidence. This guy looks at his phone, which flashes on the screen for like half a second so he can't read it, and realizes he's late for something, so he runs. He goes to a science class, which consists of 3 students, and we find out his name is Troy. This guy, Professor Richard Stein, tells him he's going to fail the class, but has one last chance if he agrees to go on some kind of expedition with him. Troy objects because the championship volleyball game is that weekend, but the professor tells him to go f*** himself. We cut to sometime later and see our unlikable cast of characters getting in the professor's van. The blonde girl gives out cupcakes, but then the fat girl claims them by licking them all, and then the douchey-looking guy played by Jeremy Jim, yeah, he typecast himself, opens his backpack and the blonde girl sees what she thinks is a bong, but it turns out to be something else.
It's greasy.
Just pump it.
What the hell is this? Ew, you jerk!
He brought the box with him. They make their way to a boat tour place in the Florida Everglades, go into the store and look around at all the garbage, and the fat girl starts grabbing snacks because being fat is her entire personality. I mean, every scene she's in, she's either eating food or talking about food. Now, I'm guessing all the people acting in this movie are Jeepers Creepers friends, and there wasn't any sort of casting call or auditions or anything. So that means he went up to one of his friends and said, "Hey, you're fat and stupid. Want to play this fat and stupid character in this movie I'm making? I wrote her with you in mind." Blonde girl picks up a box of tampons and we establish that she's on her period. This is kind of important. She asks brunette girl if she thinks Troy is hot, then Gerbil scares them with an alligator foot. Then the guys see an action figure of the skunk ape. This is not important. Professor Stein brings some to the counter and the cashier tells him it's dangerous to camp in the swamp this weekend because the local Native American tribes are gathering for the blood moon ceremonies. But the professor just yells at him that they have clearance from the state to do some kind of pollution study, as if this guy was going to stop them.
So the reservations
My name
are
is
off
Richard
limits.
Stein, and this piece of paper here says that we have state clearance to be here.
Diabetes causes irritability. They pay for this shit and then go to the airboat docks where they meet someone named Ranger Steve, and the girls think he's hot.
I would totally hit that too. I would let him patrol my wetland, right? I'd let him explore my marsh.
She says this so awkwardly for some reason. I made the mistake of giving this movie the benefit of the doubt and thought maybe it would turn out she was like a lesbian and didn't want anyone to know, so she was just pretending to find Ranger Steve attractive and trying to talk about him the way she imagined straight girls talk about guys they like, kind of like the bag of sand scene in the 40-Year-Old Virgin, but that's not the case. She just says it weird, and she never does anything like that again, so you can't even say it's supposed to be a character thing because it's out of character. Anyway, Ranger Steve tells them to get on the boat so they can ride to their campsite, and Brunette is surprised to find out that camping involves camping.
Nuh-uh, I need civilization.
Ranger Steve assures her they'll be safe because he'll be at the nearby ranger station all weekend. Then they get on the boat and we get a traveling montage with this heavy rock music to accompany their tranquil, scenic boat ride, but then it ends weirdly abruptly. So they arrive on the island, and Ranger Steve comes out with his toy gun and tells them the boys' and girls' cabins are separate, and that they'll meet a trail guide named Theo. The professor tells the boys to make a fire while he f***s off somewhere, and they all realize none of them have cell phone reception except for Nerdy Guy. They arrive at the camp and start settling into their cabins. I guess this guy in the bandana is supposed to be Theo because we haven't seen him before. Like, the character wasn't even introduced, he just sort of appears in the background of this scene. He leaves to check on the girls, and then the boys start arguing over the bunks.
Carl said he already wanted to share a bunk with me.
But yes, if you want to share a bunk with you?
Yeah, I
What, are
mean,
you guys gay?
So Nerdy Guy's name is Carl. We finally know that 10 minutes after he was introduced. Geronimo and Carl get in a fight and pile up on the bed.
What, are you guys gay?
Troy breaks up the fight and G-Unit leaves. Then Troy and Carl realize he left his toothbrush. The gang go down to the water. Giraffe asks the girls if they want to swim, but they refuse because there's alligators.
Gators. I bench 280. Think I give a f about a gator?
Troy agrees to go swimming and asks Carl if he wants to join.
dude, no way.
Troy and Jib Jab get in the water while the girls take their shirts off to tan, but then they suddenly notice a smell. But then the movie promptly forgets about it and Giunky Monkey decides to throw Carl into the water for no reason. Carl starts drowning in water shallow enough for him to stand up in, and he goes under briefly before resurfacing and saying something pulled him down.
Oh, Mac.
I was just trying to have a little fun. Hey, you're gonna kill him.
So we finally know that Japanese Sandman's character's name is Mac. He and Troy get in a fight, but Theo breaks it up. Carl complains his phone is ruined, and it was the only one that had reception. Then Theo sends Mac to go get firewood. They hear something nearby, and Theo says it might be a wild boar or a panther, so he tells Troy to go with Mac so they can protect each other with their bare hands in the event of a panther and or wild boar attack. Immediately after he just saw them fighting. Do you have any idea how dangerous wild boars are? Oh look, a pig. Ah! You stabbed me! Why? Because... Alex Bones, Aqualac, Ariel Valentine, Ranger Sticks 99, Cortez, Scientist, Dean Brown, Delcar, Diesel Weasel, Fire Angel, Dirty Mike, Dragon Monarch, Duke Snuggles, Dublin the Goose, Eduardo Sanchez, Enrique Vitari, Fractal Soraya, Gopo, Goma Flame, Gomex Trash, Hey Ren Independent, Humble Cloud, Jimmy Jam, Joel Berg, John Cleveland, Josh Leinbach, Lee Lipton, Marco Magpire, Marcus Aurelius, Martuz, Polo Check, Mitch S, Moody Boy, Noble Team Petty 3, Paco, Punta, Robert Bishop, Salty Buckets, Samantha Meyer, Sir Badass, Scott Punk, Thomas Brown, Tiberian Luke, Tony Belmonte, Toxic Masculinity, Twilight City Studios YouTube channel, Will Carpacey, X Dripping, X Grunt, X and Zenith. Paid me to do it. Bye. Hold on a second. We cut to Troy and Mac hanging out in the woods, and Mac apologizes for being a douchebag, saying he didn't expect to spend the weekend with the science class, but Professor Stein gave him an ultimatum like he did Troy. I once got an ultimatum from a loan shark, so you know what I did? I paid him. Mac walks away, then Troy hears something growling and runs, and ends up running into the rest of the class in some kind of greenhouse thing, where they have a microscope set up. Theo shows the professor a hair he found which he claims came from the swamp ape, but he doesn't believe him. I wouldn't believe him either. I wouldn't believe anything told to me by a guy wearing a plastic watch. Later that night, the gang sit by a campfire and talk about how creepy the woods are, and Troy asks Theo about the swamp ape. Theo begins his Jaws monologue about an uneventful encounter he had with it when he was a kid.
Sometimes, when I'm out here in the woods alone, rubbing one out, I can still see its eyes peeking at me through the trees.
What, are you guys gay?
So this guy is fully aware that there's a swamp ape running around this island, but he still told Mac and Troy to go off into the woods by themselves. Mac farts, then they go back to their cabins. The boys decide to go scare the girls for fun. They go to the girls' cabin and see them undressing through the window, but the fat one blocks their view.
Oh, man. All right, let's do what we came here for.
The guys bang on the door and roar, and then we abruptly cut to the next morning, so that scene was pointless. Brunette complains to Blonde Girl that she's also getting her period, and the professor sends them up a hiking trail to go collect samples, but he doesn't go with them. The reason he gives is that he's too old, but I'm gonna hazard a guess that the real reason is that the actor wasn't available the day they filmed those scenes, so they had to do a rewrite. We cut to out in the woods, and Theo warns the class to avoid snakes and quicksand while they split up, and we finally find out the other characters' names.
Troy, Lily, you guys come with me and we'll take the east trail right there. Mac, Anna Marie, Carl, and Wendy.
As they split up, they leave the cooler behind because they plan to meet back up here, but then the swamp ape snatches it away. Down by the river, Troy and Lily collect samples to talk about Anna Marie.
She's not really my type.
Well, what is your type?
Have you guys seen Theo, man? I mean, it's like so many mosquitoes. I need the bug spray.
So because none of them thought to put on insect repellent before venturing out into a Florida swamp, they decide to track down Theo. Meanwhile, Anna Marie tells Mac she needs to take a piss. Then Mac douses himself in body spray so he can smell like body odor and body spray. The others find Theo using Lay's potato chips to bait a flimsy trap made of PVC pipe spray painted silver, and he explains that he's been baiting it for a month, but whatever keeps taking the bait is smart enough to not get caught. Lily points out the blood on the ground, so Theo decides to go check the camera he set up. It's not like a trail cam that's actually made for this sort of thing, but like a Sony Handycam with tape over the logos. Funny they didn't think to cover up the logo on the potato chips. As they're watching the footage, they hear something stomping around and rush to find it, but Wendy takes the time to eat some of the potato chips. You know, because she's fat and can't control herself around food. That's the joke, you see, because she's fat and she has no other traits beyond that. We cut to Anna Marie pissing in the woods, but she gets scared by a raccoon and rushes back to Mac. And the others show up and realize they were just hearing them. They make their way back to the meeting spot and realize the cooler's gone, so they decide to go back to camp, but then Wendy wanders off for some reason. Sometime later, Theo realizes she's missing, and Mac and Anna Marie volunteer to go looking for her. We cut to Wendy eating snacks in the woods. She had to wander off and do that in secret, I guess because the others wouldn't have been able to wait to eat for the 5-minute walk back to camp and would have asked her to share. Theo and Troy run back to the greenhouse thing to grab a radio, because Theo didn't think to bring one with him, which you'd think would be standard protocol, and they tell the professor that Wendy's missing. Back at the store, which I guess is actually supposed to be the ranger station, Ranger Steve just kind of hangs out with the store guy.
What are you guys, gay?
And gets a call from Theo telling him about Wendy, so he grabs his toy gun and gets in a boat to make his way there. Out in the woods, Anna Marie and Max start making out. Then Wendy runs into the swamp ape, which takes her backpack. Then, even though it wasn't paying her any attention and she could have just ran away, she throws a rock at it. Guess what happens next? Well, at least she finally lost some weight. We cut back to Mac and Anna Marie, but then the swamp ape shows up and starts chasing them. They hide in some bushes and find Wendy's head, which Mac throws at the swamp ape. They run away again, but then Anna Marie gets caught in the quicksand Theo warned them about, so Mac tries to fight the swamp ape, and it goes about as well as you'd expect. Should have brought a snorkel, bitch. Back on the water, Ranger Steve sees the swamp ape and shoots at it, but then it flips his boat and he gets attacked by an alligator. We get a pointless scene of Troy telling Theo that Mac hasn't come back yet, then we cut to Mac waking up in the woods and realizing Anna Marie is gone, and then we cut to the professor finding Ranger Steve has become a Democrat voter and tries to use his radio to call for help, but that doesn't work, so he takes his gun. The professor runs into Mac, who tells him something killed Wendy, and then he pukes. Back at the camp, the swamp ape shows up and Carl tries to hit it with a chain that I guess he just found somewhere. The professor tries to shoot it, but he doesn't know how to use a gun because he's a sad, pathetic excuse for an American, so Theo takes it and shoots. The swamp ape runs away, and the professor blames Theo for what's happening even though he didn't do anything. Mac tells everyone it killed Anna Marie and Wendy, so they decide they have to leave the island, but they don't have a boat, so Theo suggests they can cross a sandbar when the tide goes out. But they can't take Carl with them for some reason, so they just leave him in the cabin.
Hey, Carl. Here. I brought you some Cheetos. They'll give you strength.
This is the only funny moment in the entire movie. The rest of them start making their way to the sandbar when the swamp ape suddenly appears and abducts Lily. The swamp ape throws Lily into Theo's plastic cage with Anna Marie, who turns out to still be alive. Then we cut back to the guys finding Mac's which he left behind when he ran away with Anna Marie, and then they plan to kill the swamp ape. Did you notice a lot of scenes are lit by an on-camera light? Real professional. We cut back to the cage, and the swamp ape brings the girls a raw fish to eat, but they refuse to eat it, so he forces them. The guys hear the girls crying and run toward it, then this happens. Hey, remember when the movie established that these two girls are on their periods? Well, I guess the implication is that swamp ape could smell the blood. Kind of like that one myth about bears. So everything that's happening is their fault. So the mildly racist notion that a Native American blood moon ceremony going on, which we haven't seen or heard about since then, wasn't enough to explain why there's a big monkey attacking people in a swamp. They had to throw in this little bit of misogyny too. The swamp ape suddenly gets a huge oh, I can't say that. Okay, he gets a huge surgation. There's your word of the day. Which someone had to spend time making for this movie, and I don't think I can show it without getting demonetized, so I'll just tell you it's a foot-long pink lipstick poking out of a hairy sheath. Less like a primate and more like a dog. In other words, white girls would go crazy for it. Anyway, the swamp ape drags Anna Marie off into the darkness, and he just kind of leaves the cage open. Troy and Theo run up and rescue Lily because she didn't think to just leave. Then we cut to Anna Marie trying to fight off the swamp ape. This really rustles his jimmies, so he beats her to death. What is it with low-budget Bigfoot movies and Oh, it's Sasquatch. Do me smell period blood? No, I spilled my pennies. Oh. Bye. Then the swamp ape sneaks up on the professor and rips his spine out. Mac finds Anna Marie's body, and then the swamp ape shows up, so Mac makes a flamethrower out of his body spray. The most impressive thing about this is that they actually thought to establish that he has body spray earlier. Mac backs swamp ape up into a cage, and he tells Troy to close the door behind him, like he couldn't just stand a few feet further back, he had to be in the cage with him and trap himself with this giant, hairy, muscular beast.
What are you guys, gay?
The others run away, then the swamp ape kills Mac and breaks out of the cage. I guess PVC wasn't the ideal material. Troy, Theo, and Lily get to the river and see it's full of alligators, so they start preparing a conveniently placed nearby rowboat, but then Troy remembers Carl, so he tells them to wait for him. If they were planning to go back for Carl, why did they just take him with them? Would him being injured slow them down more than going all the way to the river just to go back to get him anyway? Maybe he remembered the goblin left the stove on. Back at the camp, the swamp ape finds Carl, who tries to defend himself with a machete to no avail, and Troy shows up just in time to witness it, so he runs back to the river, and he and Theo and Lily get in the boat. But it turns out the swamp ape knows how to swim, and it snatches Theo, then grabs the boat so Troy and Lily jump out and start swimming. The swamp ape grabs Lily, but then an alligator bites his dick, enabling Lily to escape. They get to the van, and I guess Troy just happens to have the keys, so they start driving, but then the swamp ape makes them crash. And just before he crushes Troy's head, the guy from the store shoots it. This guy then proceeds to castigate them for intruding on the swamp ape's territory.
Your society is doing the same thing to the Esticapkeki species that it's been doing to all other species, pushing them out, destroying their way of life.
Yeah, how dare you defend yourselves from a murderous swamp monster that tried to rape several women? He explains he only knocked out the swamp ape, and they're not in any danger anymore because the blood moon is over. Yeah, that thing that was mentioned once at the beginning and never came up again, it's over now, so they put the swamp ape in the boat. Troy and Lily kiss.
What are you guys, gay?
Then we cut to Story Guy bringing the swamp ape back to the island in the boat, but then he wakes up. Oh, and I guess the movie's over. And those two rednecks who were killed at the beginning had nothing to do with anything. So that's Swamp Ape. Me got stabbed by pig! Thanks for watching my video, but now I have a challenge for you. In the comments, write a joke about Bigfoot. Whoever writes the funniest Bigfoot joke wins my used glucose testing strips. And don't forget to subscribe. If you're already subscribed, check my channel for videos you may have missed since YouTube doesn't always tell you when I upload, and send me your fan art, and support me on Patreon. The link's from the pinned comment. Bye.